All right, good evening to everyone. I hope you are having a great Saturday out there. Let's go ahead and get right into this. We're taking a look at our current satellite imagery here from WeatherBell here. We're looking at the GOES satellite imagery at this point. So if you'll give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me at this point, that would really help me out. But you can definitely see what we've got going on with two systems in the country right now. One is about to head on off the east coast here, but it is bringing extremely heavy snowfall, up to 2 feet of it in some parts of Maine right now. It's exiting Vermont, New Hampshire, beginning to head on off the east coast throughout this evening. We've also got a lot going on over here over the west, impacting parts of really all the way through the Mountain West, now starting to eventually eject on out into the plains, and that is what is going to set up our entire storm system that we're going to get as we make our way into this upcoming weekend. It's really not far away. In fact, let's flip on over here to the European model. You can see by the time we go towards our Saturday afternoon, snow getting going up here into the Dakotas, Minnesota. We've got showers and storms down here in the parts of Kansas and Oklahoma. So it's definitely going to be multiple different impacts coming out of this storm. We're going to see gusty winds. We've got high wind warnings issued by the National Weather Service into some parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas getting issued very soon here. And you can see this is going to really continue to develop and evolve as we go into Monday, with snow on the northern end, severe weather possibly through southern Missouri all the way down closer to the Gulf Coast. And then as we continue all the way towards Tuesday as well, severe weather continuing on the southern end maybe. And it does look like it'll break up towards the mid part of the week. But if you're just joining me here, whether you're watching the stream live with me right now, tuning in the chat, thank you to everyone. I see your zip codes. I see some of the questions already starting to maybe get on in there. But hello to everyone. I will get to your individual questions right after we do just kind of the overall forecasting part of this stream. And then, again, we'll get into those individual questions. If you're tuning in even after the live stream, you can still put in a zip code, and I will answer your comment as soon as I can. I always reply, as long as, of course, your question is, worth and very valid for answering. If it's a crazy question out there, then that I can't really answer, then I might not be able to answer that one. But most questions and zip code questions I can really get to there in the chat and afterwards in the comments section. But thank you to everybody who's putting in those zip codes. I see your questions, Severe Storm Filmer. I promise you we'll get to those individual comments and questions here momentarily. But again, let's talk about what's going on in the Northeast right now. Look at this European model scenario. Very heavy snow. Again, we're going to get up to close to 2 feet of snow there in far east central and north central parts of Maine. We've got ice going on this evening down here along the Maine coastline. Some of that is significant. This is a very quick hitting, but it's definitely a little bit more of a surprise storm up through this region. So if you live in any of the affected areas up there in the parts of Maine especially, be on high alert as that system progresses its way on through the region this evening and into our early Sunday. But again, that's out of there by the time you're waking up, and just thereafter on Sunday, just the cool breeze lingering behind it. But right on the tail of that, pretty much once that system weakens and pushes offshore, you've got your next piece of energy working its way out of the Mountain West. We're getting a lot of, light to moderate snowfall over most Mountain West areas over the next 24 hours. We're also going to get the snowfall, some of it heavy in these areas I'm hashing out here over parts of the North Central Plains, the upper Midwest. As we go late in the day Sunday, there's some of that, again, very heavy, especially in the parts of Minneapolis onsetting there, Eau Claire, Wisconsin even, far north central Iowa as well as we go through the day late Sunday here. But notice some of those areas that start off as snow into southern Minnesota, southern parts of Wisconsin. It is going to turn to rain there, but there is going to be that consistent heavier band of snow that's going to push along the far northern end of the storm, and I certainly think that is what is worth tracking, especially in those areas. That's where you could get locally 1.5 to 2 feet of snow. Simultaneously, late Sunday evening, this zone right here is going to be kind of where we're watching a severe weather threat that could include tornadoes, some hail, some gusty wind as well, making its way on through that region Sunday night going into our Monday. And then you can see through the day Monday, there's that snowfall side of the storm, and there's going to be this actually little heavier band that wraps around the system and actually digs into some of the same areas that have the severe weather potential earlier on in the storm. So I really think that's not worth 100% disregarding either, as that is certainly a very valid threat through parts of, say, Nebraska, Kansas there. But again, we're really going to be continually tracking this severe weather event that could be ongoing through Monday late evening down here over parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, maybe even entering Mississippi as the evening rolls on. And then kind of continuing to play this on out. We'll see if storms can continue through the day Tuesday. If they do, they're going to be Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Look at this, though. I mean, this is a very prolonged event in a place like Minnesota because you get the snow onsetting throughout the day Sunday. Here we go Tuesday late evening, and you're still getting that snow to wrap back around in a place like Minneapolis at the tail end of the system. So really, if you're in Minnesota, places like Minneapolis, let's just say, heavy snow to start Sunday going into early Monday, turns to rain late Monday going into Monday night, and then as we go through the day Tuesday, you turn back briefly over to snow, it looks like, at the tail end of the system. Wisconsin, unfortunately, in those areas that do turn over to rain there, as well as into the upper peninsula of Michigan, it is going to be mostly rain once for the rest of the event, once it completely turns over there. But we'll talk about snow totals here. In fact, let's just talk about the snow totals here before we kind of dive deeper into the severe weather side of things. Again, let's pull those up, and again, we're going to talk about not only the snow totals there, but what's going on in the Northeast right now. Again, an additional foot on top of some places that have already picked up quite a bit of snow falling up there into parts of New Hampshire and into Maine. But look at these totals that are going to add on up there from South Dakota into Minnesota into northwest Wisconsin, and we're going to compare this with the European model here momentarily, or with the GFS model here momentarily. We're looking at the European right now. Any of those areas you see in the pink, that's where it's 10 plus inches. Some of these brighter pinks here from Nebraska all the way up there into that Canadian border there in the Arrowhead of Minnesota there, that's where you're looking at about 12 plus inches in that foot to foot and a half range. And locally up to 2 feet probably possible in that area. And again, this is as that low kind of eventually treks on along here. Now, any of these areas in Wisconsin, which, by the way, Wisconsin has seen a little bit of a downtrend in overall snowfall potential to begin with. Remember, though, pretty much if you live anywhere in Wisconsin here, you're going to get rain that's going to melt most of that snow as we go into Monday here and pretty much ruin that event side of this here. If you live in places like northern Nebraska, you could pick up a quick foot with that wraparound band at the end of this event, even though you get the rain and the storm potential starting this off Sunday going into Monday. But it's up here in these areas where we're going to get that completely uninterrupted snow from start to finish of this event. There's not going to be rain to start, rain to finish, either way. But to be honest with you, what's interesting is Nebraska's actually on the better end of this deal between, say, Wisconsin and Nebraska, because Wisconsin, its snow turns to rain and melts. If you're a snow lover, I guess is what I'm talking about here. If you're in Nebraska, it's rain and then you get snow after, so that's a little bit more of a plus there, especially if those cooler temperatures really wrap around and allow that to stick there in the north central part of the state. But again, if you're looking for snow the entire event, you're looking up into these areas up here, and even through parts of central Minnesota as well, kind of in this area. It looks like most of this event will be pretty much on the snowier side of things. So pretty good overall. Pretty good overall snowfall. And again, Severe Storm Filmer is making a good point in the chat. This could indeed turn into a blizzard up here. We're going to have some pretty strong wind gusts moving through simultaneously with some of this snow. And it looks like some of the strongest wind gusts we're going to see are going to push in as we go towards the back end of this event with that kind of tailing band. And yeah, we're probably locally going to see some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts there wrapping into the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, parts of Minnesota as well. So I would definitely imagine that's going to cause some whiteout conditions in some local areas and definitely some heavy wraparound snow there again. But let's go back on over to those snowfall totals that we're looking at here. Again, here's your European model snowfall totals out of the entirety of this event. Let's turn it over to the GFS just to kind of show you the difference. And notice the GFS still is a little more bullish with that initial snow band, dumping heavy snow there into northeastern Iowa, into parts of western Wisconsin. But again, a lot of that probably turning over to rain throughout the middle part of this, even the entire part of this back half of this event in that region. So really, again, it's this swath right here that has that potential to really stick and stay on the ground there throughout the entirety, especially if you're just north and west of Minneapolis there. And it's going to be some decent snow as well. And again, locally, some of those lighter turquoise colors trying to show on up there into parts of eastern South Dakota, somewhere there into central Minnesota as well. That's where you could locally pick up close to 1.5 to 2 feet of snow. I don't think many areas are going to touch 2 feet, but I'm sure that locally high amount that you hear about, like on the news, on some sort of television channel, that's kind of where I'm sure there will be some sort of report that comes out of a local service. Someone gets a ruler out, a yardstick out, I should say, and they get a 2-foot reading somewhere in that mix. But also, don't count out some of the snow that's in the Mountain West out of the storm. Locally higher amounts, 1 to 2 feet in some of the higher elevations as well. And again, not a bad snow through the Dakotas because it is staying all snow there. It's just not quite as good because, it's not quite as much, but at least you're staying all snow in those areas. Again, and I'm talking as if you are a person who likes snow as I say this. Now, again, let's go back on over and let's kind of talk about the severe weather side of things here because we do have a severe weather outlook worth talking about from the Storm Prediction Center. And this is what it looks like. It's not going to fit perfectly on your screen. I apologize for that, but let's kind of get that on there overall. Here we go. You can kind of see the overall outline as we go Sunday into Sunday night. This is where we have our slight risk, the most concerning setup for severe storms there from Colby, Kansas, down to Wichita, on down to Woodward in Oklahoma, the Enid area as well, northwest of Oklahoma City, but right into the Oklahoma City area itself as well. We're going to be watching the threat not only for severe hail, which we'll probably see some scattered instances of maybe 1 to 2 inch diameter hail. We'll also be looking at the potential for some briefly gusty winds in some of these areas around 60 miles per hour out of these storms. But also right here, you can see in this 5% zone, that's 5% chance within 25 miles of a point of probably a weak tornado. But this event, with the kind of atmospheric profile we have, I wouldn't completely rule out a brief stronger tornado. That doesn't look like the big chance, though. I do want to go on over now to Radar Omega. Show you with the HRRR model what our latest model guidance is kind of picking up on with composite reflectivity, which is just basically your storm radar here, future radar. And I apologize, I will be with your questions. Type those zip codes in the chat here in just a second. Let's go on over here back to the latest or most recent full run, giving us that future radar as we go through the day Sunday and into Sunday night. And what you're really going to notice is kind of where these cells set on up here. First of all, there is going to be some rain throughout the morning into the early afternoon as well over some of these areas. That could help to put that cooling factor on the atmosphere. But models have a little bit of a more volatile environment trying to focus its way on up here and try to get into some of these storms right on up here into parts of Nebraska, central Kansas. As we go into the evening, Sunday evening, wouldn't be completely shocked if they do some sort of enhanced risk, a very small one at that, somewhere in maybe Kansas, where I kind of had that risk on my ONW severe scale in my latest video from yesterday. But you can definitely see there's that initial boundary bringing up that rain, and overall the warm sector is still following it. Here's that little band right along this boundary sometime into the sundown time frame. That's when storms are really going to fire. If we get storms to fire even closer to 4, 5, 6 o'clock here over far western Kansas, southwest Nebraska, those could be on the stronger side as well. But continue to watch those. They'll lift towards the north. I don't think they'll have too much in them for too long. But again, brief tornado touchdowns probably certainly not out of the question here over Nebraska into Kansas, maybe parts of Oklahoma as well. We'll also watch a little bit of a convective cluster down here possible into parts of central Texas. You can see that. Trying to head eastward, even towards Dallas, with maybe some gusty winds and hail as the night rolls on. But, we'll see what goes on out of those cells as they try to push towards Des Moines in that same environment that they were in closer towards Nebraska and Kansas. But keep in mind, we're also running up closer to where it's going to be snowing in this part of the storm right here. So it's kind of getting closer to that cooler air. Nonetheless, Storm Prediction Center saying some of these storms early Monday could be on the feistier side, as we'll get a few cells working their way even into parts of southern Minnesota, southern Wisconsin as well as we go through the day on Monday there. And again, then at that point, we turn our attention to what's going on down here. Looks like we're going to get a little bit of a feisty line segment with some gusty winds along it of storms there from Missouri all the way on down there closer to Dallas, Texas, and eastward there as we go towards Monday afternoon. The severe threat looks like it's going to remain down here. I do think the Storm Prediction Center could use to elevate the risk a little higher on up in here. I think the risk is going to kind of deaden out closer on up there to Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. Maybe some gusty winds along that line, and that's really going to be the height of this. I really think tornado threat is going to be very low up in this part of the storm, and I'll keep you posted because you're kind of splitting the difference between that favorable shear environment and just the overall favorable convective environment that's further towards the south, and you're just really dealing with the wind energy that's in between. So if anything, if you get anything there into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, that's going to be maybe the remnant of a wind line there. But and you can kind of see that if I go on over to the NAM and get to that same hour here, using the same time frame of run that we were looking at just now with the HRRR model, we can play it on out, and I'll catch up on the chat here just momentarily because then we'll be kind of done. talking about the forecast, and we'll start getting into the zip codes. Notice, again, kind of similar look to the NAM as well. You see that line by the afternoon, maybe running a little bit slower than the HRRR. But notice, I think the strongest part and impacts of this line are going to be down here, right in this area, right here. And the Storm Prediction Center overall has this outlined. Again, though, I don't think they have it outlined quite as far north as it should be necessarily as we go into, no, it's not day 4 anymore, it's day 3, my bad. As we go into Monday there. And again, notice where that risk is outlined. And again, I think maybe the supercell potential is going to be a little bit higher down in some of these areas. But again, I think that this line that could be up closer to Memphis is just being completely ignored. And a marginal threat extension is almost 100% necessary up into some of these areas, I think, as we go with time and as the Storm Prediction Center sees fit. But I definitely think the slight risk zone is on par, but I think the slight risk could be expanded northward just a little bit. The marginal could definitely go northward. But again, I think Midwest Ohio Valley staying pretty safe out of this event in terms of severe weather. But again, we'll be watching tornado threat here late Sunday. And then we'll be watching the tornado threat probably down here as we go into Monday. And then we'll see if some of those isolated cells could continue into this area as we go into Tuesday. But that's a very, we're kind of still on the fence on forecasting that. So let's go into the chat. I've got a bunch of different messages here. If you're just tuning in and you want to put a zip code down there in the chat, I'll get to you. Now, if you're in the chat right now, I'm going to go all the way back on up towards the top and go to the first zip code I got, which is 38506. So that's what I'm going to do for Jack War there. If you're still tuned in, we'll get to you in just a second. And I'm just going to put this on a generic screen. So, you know, I don't really like to just completely display where the pin's going to drop down when I put in the zip code for someone here. So let me put that in on the side. There in Tennessee, 38506. Thanks again for tuning in to everybody here tonight. And in that Cookeville, Tennessee area. Yeah, I think your severe threat's going to be interesting. If you get anything, it's probably going to be maybe some gusty winds late Monday night going into Tuesday there. But kind of looking at the model we're on right now, you can kind of see how the system evolves, and it looks like you're going to get the rain probably sometime as we go Tuesday morning, maybe even into the afternoon hours. It depends on how fast the storm goes. It looks like the strongest convective activity would be down there, but in Cookeville, you'll probably get some heavy rain, maybe some gusty winds along this line of showers and storms that's going to make its way on through. In terms of severe weather, storm energy is going to be something that's a little bit more lacking that far north. And again, maybe that's part of the reason the Storm Prediction Center has been a little bit they haven't really put down a threat in this zone quite yet, just because of how lacking the storm energy might be as we go towards Monday. But it's normally our convective models normally tend to kind of help us understand the storm energy a little better, because tomorrow they're already starting to try and maybe say that we'll get a little bit more moisture up here into the plains. Same thing could go on up there closer to Memphis Monday afternoon. And the same could go to you in Cookeville, Tennessee as we go towards Tuesday. Some point during the afternoon hours, we'll see if the line of rain actually outruns the storm energy. But if I'm you, I'm on high alert Tuesday going into early Wednesday. Really, anytime during the day Tuesday is when you could see this threat develop. I'll know a little bit more as we get, over the next 48 hours, we'll start to hone in on what kind of activity you'll get. But I really don't think severe weather is going to be a major concern, Jack War. So I'll keep you posted on that, but I don't see anything too major coming into that. Severe storm film, what causes a blizzard to form. It's basically just when you get, it's a strengthening low pressure system. You reach the wind threshold of strong wind gusts that come, and it can you can get a blizzard when there's not actually snow falling too. If you get strong enough winds, exceeding, especially, I think it's somewhere in that 40 to 50 mile per hour range. In fact, that's really going to bug me if I don't put that in. Let me go and send you back on this real quick, and we're going to, I want to make sure I get the exact wind correct. So it's going to be wind gusts 35 miles per hour or higher. So yeah, it's definitely going to reach that criteria into the Minneapolis region. You're right, severe storm filmer. As we kind of touched on earlier, those wind gusts are going to get closer to the 40-45 mile per hour mark at the very back end of this event. Let's get back on over. Latin 23MX says 78724 for your forecast, and then Tim McCready is up next after that. Let's get into that. 78724 I mean, that is in Austin, Texas, and I think Austin, Texas isn't going to get too much of anything extreme out of this particular storm system, but it does look like you could get some convective activity as we go Sunday night into Monday, I believe. So let's go back on over to this. Yeah, and you can see kind of as we go late Sunday going into Monday, we'll see if we could get some brief damaging winds and hail along this potential line of storms. You're probably going to get the storms, if I had to guess, in a place like Austin during a more unfavorable time of the day, so the severe risk might actually kind of jump over you and then towards the east. And that's something we've seen with the models. But if you get anything, it'll be late Sunday night going into early Monday there in Austin, Texas. And I'll let you know if that changes, so stay tuned with me. Send me any more comments, questions you have in future content as we get closer to that. 45014 says Tim McCready. Ross, Ohio. Yeah, I was honing in on you the other day on up there in Ohio, and I believe you're in the southwestern corner. As we go towards Tuesday in the afternoon, it's looking like you're going to get some good old-fashioned rain, maybe some brief thunder up in that area. I don't see anything too major. I don't see anything severe. You're going to kind of, again, jump between the worst of the snow side, the worst of the storm side. There's kind of this middle ground area right in here that's going to miss out on the worst, I think, overall. We'll see if that trailing little band as we go into early Wednesday morning could produce anything interesting. That's that same kind of band that produced those supercells Sunday over parts of the plains, but in an early morning time frame over the Ohio Valley in a colder storm system, you're probably not going to get anything too severe. Girl Dev says, hello, how are you? I'm doing very good. If you're still on the stream, thanks so much for joining me. Always good to see your questions and your concern over severe weather, because it's good to have people more weather aware instead of not prepared. It's very good to see that. And I jumped over a question, actually. Is Ross, Ohio, going to have any severe weather in April? Chances go up as we go through the spring. I think your best chance for severe weather in Ohio is definitely going to be with anything we can get in the summer there, Tim. Let's see. Continuing through the comments here. I get like no snow and mostly rain. I'm fine with that. Jake's Awesome Vince says. Alrighty. Yeah, don't like severe storms. Need at least an inch of rain. Severe Storm Filmer says he thinks they'll do a 30% hatched wind threat for day 3. And I do think that's a possibility. You get that line, if that continues to line up like so, that could be interesting. But I've seen this kind of look on the NAM model before. It hasn't 100% played out like this. So I think it's worth holding the horses on a 30% hatched wind risk, but it probably will maybe begin to get added at some point. I don't really think that the tornado threat's going to be extreme out of this. I might be wrong. Maybe with some of those cells in Mississippi. Whoa. I did the same thing I did a couple days ago. Maybe as we go into Mississippi, but I don't know. I'm not feeling that. Quite as much, the tornado threat. But yeah, I do agree the wind threat could get elevated. Who's going to get an enhanced? Girl Dev says. I'm interested to see if we get an enhanced tomorrow. If we do, it's going to be maybe into parts of Kansas, probably, somewhere in that area. Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe, with the day 3, possibly. I agree with you, Severe Storm Filmer. Yeah, Indiana's going to be out of the slight risk. The slight risk, I definitely do not think that's going to make it up to Indiana. And I apologize. I've just been circling a few things without you being able to see them. Let me go back on over and turn it to where you can see what I'm looking at right now on my screen. Here we go. Girl Dev, what I was saying a second ago, that maybe we get an enhanced risk here or somewhere in here. Probably those would be the 2 enhanced risks we could possibly get if we did get an upgrade. Are we expecting any severe weather on Tuesday and Wednesday? Eleva Tours by Rainmate says. Into Tuesday and Wednesday, if there's any threat, it's going to be kind of confined down into this region right here. And we'll see how the northern end of this line fares as it moves through Tennessee, probably Tuesday. 47802 says Girl Dev. Yep. Okay. Let me get that zip code in the chat, or not in the chat, but in the 47802. Terre Haute. Yeah, you're going to get some rain Monday going into Tuesday here, and I'll play it out for you right there. Mostly as we go Monday night going into Tuesday. And it will be heavy rain, maybe some brief thunder, but not tornado threat at this point. And I'll let you know if that changes. Yeah, Tuesday's just some rain in Indiana. I don't think it's too worrisome or anything you need to panic about there. And we've got lots of other comments as well, but I don't see any like individual questions. What does Storm Prediction Center look at for hail? To be honest with you, I'm not an expert at exactly what the Storm Prediction Center does. Severe Storm Filmer. Obviously, I don't work there. Definitely a high-pressure job. I really feel bad about some of the criticism that they face after severe weather events like what happened on up there into parts of Ohio, a week and a half ago. I'm sure that was an unprecedented event, and I'll admit the Storm Prediction Center's outline was definitely quite wrong for that day, but it's not often. Most people are only going to look at when the outlook gets wrong for the Storm Prediction Center, and not when they get it right. So people just take it for granted when the forecasting's right, and then they kind of call out when it gets wrong. And I feel really bad for the forecasters there that take that criticism, because 90% of the time it is pretty spot on with normally the risk zones and where the tornado severe weather occurs. But yeah, I mean for hail, you're looking at that cold air kind of coming in the atmosphere, and normally their descriptions are actually quite easy to dissect a lot of the time down below the outlooks. If you click on their actual website here, go down, so kind of they talk about shortwave troughs, general consensus, and the models. And again, something we'll see about tomorrow is if the dew points can get further north there into parts of Kansas or Oklahoma. You're welcome, Girl Dev. Again, questions are always welcome here at One Nation Weather. We're not going to hold you accountable for or not hold you accountable. What's the word? Put you under pressure for asking too many questions. Moderate risks events are possible this summer near Ohio. To be honest with you, it's way too early to call that severe storm filmer. It seems like we tend to get at least one or two on up there in the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley sometime during the summer. And with a La Nina summer, I would say the chances are a little higher than normal. But I wouldn't really try to get my hopes up on that. And to be honest with you, looking at this summer is not something I'm 100%, haven't been 100% like locked in on or focused on at this point, as I'm just kind of trying to get focus zones for right now and what's going on with current events in the weather department. But that is a good question. JAWG _SK says, do you think the marginal risk will extend into Wisconsin? And I don't think we're going to get a marginal risk into Wisconsin. But if we did, it would be on, I believe, Monday. And actually, there might be a little bit of one trying to get on up there. Yeah, and if that's the marginal risk you're talking about in the chat, this one right here that we get in Iowa, that's a very conditional one as we go towards Monday. Cold core mid-upper level trough will move quickly northeastward across the upper Midwest Monday. Even though low-level moisture should remain quite limited, most guidance shows low 50s surface dew points present ahead of a deep surface low across Iowa Monday afternoon. By the way, this is a direct quote from the Storm Prediction Center. Just modest daytime heating will support weak destabilization given the cold mid-level temperatures. And it does say isolated hail, strong gusty winds, and perhaps even a tornado or two all appear possible with the sustained low-topped convection that can get developing there in Iowa. Could that extend into Wisconsin? Maybe. If it does, it's going to be the far, like it's going to go like that, kind of. That's going to be kind of the marginal risk we may get if it extends. It'll kind of encompass that area there. But again, I'm really interested to see how this down here shifts around on Monday, because I really think if I'm drawing this, and in fact I can get different colors too. Hear me out. If I'm drawing this, I'm trying to get the marginal risk maybe like that, and then I'm trying to get the slight risk more in the same zones it's in, sure, already, but then maybe on up like that too. So I think both of those could be extended a little bit more to the north as we go towards Monday. And then again, Tuesday, if any risk continues, it's going to be somewhere kind of in this region there, that overall trajectory. And this is not WeatherBell we're on right now. It's just the tab I normally use for WeatherBell. That's why it says WeatherBell live stream right now. WeatherBell free trial is in the description as always. It's the maps that I use throughout the stream most of the time, like these right here. Am I still forecasting, or am I asking questions, Leo the Weather Nerd? I'm answering or not asking questions, answering questions. I am answering questions right now, Leo the Weather Nerd. So feel free to drop any questions and put whatever you got down there in the chat. Great to see you here on the stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once we get beyond that, it looks like we'll get a little bit of a lull in the overall pattern. But things will start to get a little bit more interesting probably as we head towards the following weekend. Am I going to make my Outlook live? What do you mean my Outlook live? Sorry, I'm just a little confused on that question. But that's not a bad idea if you're saying like make an ONW severe scale graphic live. So we were looking at a second ago. And again, this all here on the back end of the storm is going to be some snow. So we'll see how heavy that could be through some of these areas here. Even wrapping around into parts of northern Missouri, Iowa, this area as we go into Tuesday as well. Always wanted to work at the Storm Prediction Center. Severe Storm Filmer says, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea to do the severe scale live. Not a bad idea. If that's what you're you were kind of inquiring about there, Caden Ruzica. And thank you for joining me there. Let's go down. I'm actually going to my slideshow where I do the severe scale graphics. Please, everyone, ask questions if you have any. So here's the severe scale. And I wish I could do this a little better. Let me do this. Here's my severe scale as we go. And yes, don't make fun of me for doing one in Google Slides. Google Slides is underrated. Okay, I'm telling you that now. Let's just X that out while I'm here. Okay, but yeah, well, let's make one now. Severe Storm Filmer. I totally agree with you right now. Let's make one right now. Here we go. So tomorrow, again, this is kind of what I was talking about yesterday. If I'm putting a 3 down, which I probably am, tomorrow, it's going to be kind of right in here into Kansas, where it looks like some of those supercells will fire on off. So we're going to make the yellow border color, and we're going to kind of fill that in, and then just kind of send that backwards. So there we go. Right in there. There we go. Google Slides is underrated. I agree. And then we're just going to type up our little description here. Supercells look to develop Sunday during the late day and evening hours. Threats should include briefly a tornado or two, some large 1 to 2 inch hail in scattered fashion, and low-end wind risk persisting even into the night. A little bit. We'll just put a little bit there to kind of do that. All right. There you go. So that's what that looks like for tomorrow. And there's my explanations of the severe risk scale. But that's what it looks like, Severe Storm Filmer. So now you know what it looks like, how I create these. Can I show you how I make my thumbnails too? I would, but the problem is I don't have my thumbnail application open, and man, does that thing, Affinity. It's a really good program, but my computer just doesn't have a fun time with it. And it takes me like 10 minutes to, not even kidding, to load up the maps into that, because it is the Trilogy maps. And those are really high resolution USA maps, and then I have to fill them in. So it takes me a while to load those into the program. So I would have to set that up like well before stream if I were going to do that. So I can't do that on the spot tonight, unfortunately. No. But yeah, I do have a flood scale I can use. And this was y'all kind of let me know while we're just kind of sitting here, and I'm waiting on maybe other people to put zip codes and questions in the chat. This is my potential flood scale, and it would be on that same 1 to 7 scale that I have the severe scale for. And flooding kind of follows the same wording, just with obviously the word flooding, rainfall event, kind of replacing the severe weather words. But you can see there, low certainty for level 1, but brief and localized flooding looks possible. And again, I'm not talking about any event, I'm just talking about overall how I could use these in the future. 2 would be isolated flooding expected, small waterways are most affected. Level 3 is an increased flood risk with spots of moderate flooding possible. 4 is scattered flooding with some significant possible. 5 is a signal for a dangerous flooding event, isolated significant flooding likely. And again, I can go back over here now to the severe scale, and look, I talked about signal for dangerous severe storms at level 5 with outbreak potential, and look at this. Signal for dangerous flooding with isolated significant flooding potential is my 5 on the flood scale. So it's basically just in line with severe weather, again, just with the word flooding replacing it, basically. 6 would be widespread flooding expected with many significant floods possible, and then 7 would be the highest certainty for catastrophic or very high impact flood event. I'm still debating whether I'm going to use this or not in videos, just because I feel like it might not be quite as useful as the severe scale is, because, you know, the flooding is something that's easier to pinpoint in most cases, and individual opinions aren't necessarily quite as important. You know, it's normally known overall in a general fashion where the heaviest rain is going to be. Flooding risks tend to be easier to predict. And those tend to be on point by the Weather Prediction Center there. Storm Prediction Center, obviously, there's going to be some things that go wrong when it comes to severe weather prediction just by natural. But I drew these maps, Severe Storm Filmer. I drew them in Google Slides using the tool up here. You can, like, trace things. So if you get a map, you can trace it. You can make any outline you want. Yeah. Hoping to kind of accelerate channel growth a little bit more here in the near future. It's been a little bit of a slow time the last month or so. So if you haven't been watching this, if you've been watching this and you know family who might be interested in watching this content as well, please share this out. Really helps me out. Certainly helps me out. What map do I use to draw on? Oh, well, since I use WeatherBell, I believe I trace that over in Google Slides, I think. Or some other like a free map off Google or something like that. Okay. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I used to put the Google Slides map. You're welcome, Leo the Weather Nerd. Trying to do my stuff, watch some of my fans' videos as well as they post. Severe Storm Filmer, Leo the Weather Nerd, always in my chat. Thanks to you guys for being here all the time. Yep. But it looks like the views are kind of starting to go down on this particular stream. The discussion's kind of coming to a little bit of a close here on this end. So thanks to everybody for tuning into me here. I'm hoping to have some sort of video, something tomorrow. And it might not be at my usual time tomorrow either. I might try to post a little earlier or a little later tomorrow. So we will see when I do that. But I should have something out tomorrow, hopefully, to kind of give a final update on what's going on out of this current storm system that we're going to be getting. But for now, thanks to everybody for joining me. And I'm checking out for this stream. Y'all have a good night.